Welcome to the Voices of the GESDA Summit. Today it's two voices. Welcome Doaa Abdel Motaal. You are co-author of Antarctica, the Battle for the Seventh Continent. And welcome to Katarina Gårdfeldt, Director General of the Swedish Polar Research Secretariat. Excuse me. You both participated in a panel on polar research. So, Katarina, let me start with you. What is the future of polar research in the current geopolitical situation?
Thank you. Well, to predict the future, it's not easy, but if I may reflect on it, I can see from the past decades an increasing interest in polar research. And my guess, it's that polar research will have an increasingly importance in the future, in the near future. What I can see is that world-leading international scientists are putting their research career to polar science. And I think that the topic is so broad, it's multidisciplinary, and it engages a huge community of world-leading scientists now, and that is drawing attention to the field. So I think that polar science will increase its impact as a world-leading scientific area.
Mm-hmm. Doaa, how do you see this future?
So thank you very much for this very interesting question, which we've debated at length in the panel that we've just held. I think science and geopolitics are incredibly intertwined in the poles. Science does not happen independently of politics in either pole, and it's important to understand that. And I think that going forward, the geopolitical component of science is likely to rise, and we shouldn't be naive about that. We have an Antarctic treaty system that has dedicated Antarctica to peace and scientific research, and the outcome of that has been a continent covered in scientific research stations, some of which have very little personnel and produce very little science. Scientific research stations, very often in Antarctica, are there to plant the national flag. Up in the Arctic, we have a different situation. We have a very loose Arctic Council that is designed to manage scientific relations between Arctic states. That has been dissolved or suspended, let's say, to be more accurate, in light of the current geopolitical situation. So geopolitics clearly has a very big impact on science. It is strategic science in the poles.
Katarina, what is the importance of this research? As we've heard, there's just, everybody's out there.
When you ask for importance, do you mean societal importance?
Yes,
or
that's what I mean.
Scientific importance?
Well, a little bit of both, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So I will answer a little bit of both. I think it's extremely important to conduct polar science because there's a lot of curiosity-driven polar science that is going on now. Let me, for example, take the ice cube at the Antarctica, where 1 cubic kilometer of the Antarctic ice sheet is used as a telescope to look into outer space and understand where we are coming from. So that is curiosity-driven research, and that is really world-leading and extremely important to understand the history of the Earth and the history of the universe. It's important on another level, let us say societal level, because if you do not understand the climate change in the Arctic, you will not understand global environmental change globally. For example, the speed of sea level rise in more temperate regions will be affected by the melting of the ice sheets, North Greenland, and also Antarctica in a longer time frame. And it's important to understand how this ice sheet on land, I'm talking about the ice sheets on land, are melting in order to understand how sea level rise will affect infrastructure, possibilities to grow food and cities and all our infrastructure that we rely on now, actually.
But there is a fine line between the exploitation of resources and research and exploration of the unknown. How is that managed, Doaa?
So the balance between conservation and exploitation. I think that balance has yet to be struck, and we must watch it closely. In Antarctica, I think the future of Antarctica is still to be decided. We have an Antarctic treaty system that is not the last word on the governance mechanism for that continent. It's a huge global or regional common, if you will, and its future is still to be decided. The question of Antarctica is very much on the table, and the balance between science and exploitation is still to be determined. Up in the north, we have a different situation because the Arctic Ocean is not a global common. The bulk of the Arctic Ocean, whether through extended continental shelf claims or exclusive economic zones, belongs to the sovereign states that surround that ocean. How they will balance conservation with other goals is also something we must watch very closely, and it is a shame that we have suspended the work of the Arctic Council. We have to see how we can restore scientific collaboration and dialogue on conservation as soon as possible.
One last question to the both of you. Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the situation? Maybe Doaa, you can answer first.
I think it's important to be optimistic, but also realistic. And realism tells us that the situation is very delicate and that it could worsen very quickly if we don't come to our senses very quickly. The biggest crisis before us is the climate crisis, and I don't think we can afford to lose sight of that. That really has to be our priority in both poles and everywhere else for the survival of humanity. So I hope that countries and the various actors will see this. So that a more optimistic scenario can be fulfilled.
And Katarina?
Yeah, well, thanks to my parents, I guess. I'm an optimist. I was born as an optimist, so nothing can stop me. But of course, I see the challenges about polar science in the future and what we're talking with the mining and all the challenges with the pollution and so in the Arctic regions. But as a scientist, I must say that I believe that more knowledge can bring us to a better world, and international collaboration is the method, I think. So I'm optimistic.
Okay. Thank you both for answering our questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thanks.